Welcome back to Tech Tips with Flyboys. So today we're going to do something a little bit different than we have on previous videos or videos that we're already working on. Today we're going to do a debrief. So the reason I'm calling this a debrief is on the last 3 attempts to do dual electronic ignition installs on Piper aircraft that use the Lycoming 540 series engine, we have found the same problem on all 3 aircraft. This is a problem you're not going to find right away unless you remove the propeller and the flywheel. So today, we're going to talk about the crankshaft oil seal. Now, we're going to send this over to Lycoming. I've already had 2 conversations with Lycoming tech support in the last 24 hours. That's why we're going to generate this video, so we've got something for them to look at. I'm also going to send them some additional data on the aircraft, the engine, and the times on these engines so that they have something to work with. So the reason I'm doing this, I want to bring attention as part of the install procedure on these systems where we have to install the crankshaft trigger wheel on the crankshaft. We're right in close proximity to where this oil seal is, so it's very important that we also take a look at this oil seal. Because for all of our installs, if for whatever reason we get too close to the oil seal, we can nick it and potentially cause damage. As we know, oil seals are designed to seal. If it doesn't seal, it opens up the possibility of oil leaving the engine via that front crankshaft. If it does that under high pressure, you can blow out a lot of oil in a short period of time with no indication unless it comes out the top of the cowling. So that's why I'm calling this a debrief. So we're going to talk about this a little bit more in general. So a little history on what we found on all 3 of these aircraft. The first one, I didn't do anything as far as documentation. I just marked it off as, okay, it's a one-off, it happens, but this is 3 airplanes in a row. The last one, I was attempting to do a install video, pulled the prop off, and noted that the crankshaft oil seal wasn't quite straight in there, so instead of being flush, it was off on a little bit of an angle. And just through my commentary as I was talking about it, and I pushed on the seal and playing with it, I was able to push it right back in the groove. It was never fully sealed. Clear silicone. This one, as soon as I pulled the propeller and the flywheel off, this one I actually had the video running as I was pulling the prop off. As soon as I pulled the flywheel out and put the camera in there, this seal was right up against the prop flange, not even engaged in the engine. These are major concerns, people. Very major. I've even had a heart-to-heart discussion with myself, which kind of sounds weird, but stop and think about it. With the work that I do and a lot of other mechanics, if you fly an aircraft the same that I do, you put your family in it, you put yourself in it, we really start setting ourselves up for safety risk to the point where I'm going to title this video, Are You Scared Yet? The things that I have found on some of these airplanes are enough to make your end pucker and you go, oof. That's what I did on this airplane with just the different things that I have found, especially this one, mainly because I flew this plane in here. There is no sign of an oil leak. There was no indication that the seal was not properly installed in the engine. There's no indication that there was an imminent failure, but without this seal, it does open up the possibility of if it does start to leak, it could go fast, and then you find yourself in a major concerned situation. For pilots that are flying along, if they don't have an indication early on, you just see your oil pressure drop off and your oil temperature skyrocket, you're going to start looking for an airport. If you blow enough oil in the short period of time, you now put yourself into an emergency situation with a potential engine seizure if it doesn't seize while you're at high power, which is going to be another big ouch. Engines doing sudden stoppage in flight means a lot of torque in a really quick period of time. If it doesn't break the engine bolts or the engine mounts when it stops, you still are looking at a stiff prop, which is unnerving. Been there, it's a little spooky. If you don't manage the emergency properly, you now set yourself up at risk for, the drum roll here, fatal. If you don't manage an emergency properly, you don't land the aircraft correctly, you now set yourself up for fatal, not just in the airplane, but in houses, in cars, those on the ground that are innocent bystanders, not even expecting you to come flying in as like a bullet. That's why I'm putting a lot of emphasis on this oil seal and this service letter right here from Lycoming. So let's break this down on the two service letters from Lycoming, or service instructions, I'm sorry. So in 1324, they are now on revision D. Revision C, which was in effect from May of 2009 through January of 2023, their primary recommended adhesive is Dow Natural Cure 737. When I looked at it a little bit more, this is a clear silicone type adhesive that is good up to 325 degrees, and in all the tech documents that I looked at last night, I can't find anything in here about resistance to oil or fuel or any other product that is found with an engine. So here's 1325C. Now the cure time on this is 24 hours. So once you get the seal on the engine, you goop it all up and you get it in the engine, 24 hours, you don't touch that prop, you can't do anything, you gotta let it sit so that it can cure. If there's already oil contamination in there that didn't get properly cleaned, that now jeopardizes the contact between the adhesive and the seal. So if we come over to January 2023, it's 15 years later, 14 years later, we now have Lycoming 1323 Section D, or Revision D. Now I'm going to read this, and I want to place a lot of emphasis on what I'm about to read. The reason for the revision. To clarify, the cleaning for the crankshaft bore added Permatex Optimum Max Flax Black, part number 27037, as the recommended sealant. They did away with the Dow 737 Natural Cure and switched over to this. This here, I'm able to pick up at my Auto Value here in town, CarQuest, Advanced Auto, AutoZone. This is a fairly readily available over-the-shelf purchase. Readily available. Prior to, I was using Pliobond 20 on the advice of my mentor, which was an alternate to the Dow 737 Natural Cure. The reason that he liked it was that it was less prone to contamination from oil in the engine, but it also has a 15-minute set time as opposed to 24 hours with the Permatex that we're using here in the 737 Natural Cure. So let's look at this a little bit again. To clarify, the cleaning for the crankcase bore added Permatex Optimum Max Flax Black, part number 27037, as a recommended sealant. So they've changed the recommendation for the sealant for installation of this the oil seal. With Pliobond number 20, number 25, or Dow Corning 737 Natural Cure sealant as an acceptable alternate. They are still allowing the Dow 737 Natural Cure as an approved alternate sealant in the event that this is not used. Well, we need to get away from that. They've also added some photos, figures, step-by-step removal and install instructions of split and solid ring crankshaft oil seals. They've added figures and instructions on how to install either seal, added figures and instructions with regard to removing sealant if any gets on the crankshaft or the seal lip. This is another big one. On all three of these engines, there is sealant on the crankshaft. Not just on the seal, not just on the case, on the crankshaft as well. They call out in here on how to properly take care of it and clean this. So now that we've kind of beat that to death a little bit, we're going to do a video on how to properly install this crankshaft oil seal in an upcoming video. But in the meantime, we want to get this up, get it published. We want to get it in front of Lycoming. And with my experience, I do believe this does qualify as a reason to do a service difficulty report for the FAA. But I'm going to have that discussion again with Lycoming Tech Support after they see this video, the pictures, and get the information for the aircraft. So another thing to point out with all three of these aircraft, all these engines, these three specifically, was overhauled in 2000, 2002, and in this last case, 1991. These engines are all well over the 20-year recommended 20-year overhaul period that Lycoming puts out in the TBO times. On all three of these engines, Two of them are right at 1,500, give or take a little bit. And the second one that we did, which we're going to show you here in the video as well, is at 1,800 hours. So there's a little bit of reason for concern on the life of the sealant, also the life of how long these seals have been installed. I've gone back 10 years in the logbooks, and I can't find any place on any three of them to document where this crankshaft oil seal has been replaced. So with that being said, let's move on to the video, and you can see exactly what we see. And place your thoughts, place your comments. If you think this is helpful, give us a thumbs up. If you happen to be a mechanic or a pilot out in the field looking at this video and you've experienced this, put that in the comments as well, and also reach out to Lycoming Tech Support. The more information they have, the more we can look at the sealants and getting a better procedure that's going to be safer. So, enjoy. Alright, so now that we got the prop off, go up here and take a look. So make some marks somewhere on your flywheel to make sure that the propeller goes back on in the correct position. And also, we're going to take a look at the indexing here and make sure that we are clocked correctly for the flywheel when it goes back on. So we're still set at top dead center. We're still set at top dead center, so you can use the mark here on the back that we've made with our with the seam of the crankcase as our line. You can also use that as a reference. Nothing else here is going to change. Let's pull the flywheel off, and we're going to take a look at the oil seal and the crankshaft and see what kind of corrosion is in here. So this engine has 1,500 hours since overhaul on the original cylinders. That off, belt off. We're just going to set the flywheel aside. And let's up here and take a look. Hopefully this one's better than the last one. Get our oil pan out of here so we don't spill anything in there. And I don't believe what I'm seeing already. Well, we're not getting one done today. What do you see there? Third one in a row we've had this problem with. So I think it's time we're going to do a video, and actually right here's another thing too. This boss has been pushed out. It may have been in the process of removing the propeller, but we're going to have to put that back in too. That's just a press in, so that's easy. But another crankshaft seal. Alright, so here's a little continuation of some of the stuff we're looking at here. I squawked about this crankshaft. I can't hardly move this, but if you look right through here, it's the same thing as the last plane we encountered. This is all clear silicone. Clear silicone is not approved for installation of these oil seals. They do not hold up to the oil, they do not hold up to the heat, and it causes this to come out. The question I have, and I've already consulted with the owner on this, if you look down here, this is all dry. How can that seal be out? And see, there's some silicone hanging right there. You can see it all the way down along the case and all the way up through the side. This is all clear silicone. Same thing right here. We pull this off, the back of the propeller. This is all clear silicone, guys. This is not approved. So we're going to do a little video on how to properly install this crankshaft trigger wheel and get this fixed, because this is not good. This is not approved. This is not good. This is an accident and potential fatality waiting to happen. Not cool, guys. So now that we got the prop off, we're going to get ready and do a crankshaft trigger wheel install on this Lycoming TIO540S1AD on this Turbo Lance 2. Now we've got it off, one of the first things we want to do is take a look at the oil seal and the crankshaft and see if there's any dirt, debris, rust, or any cracks or damage to the oil seal before we even get started. If there's damage to the oil seal or if there's rust, then we're going to need to take a little bit of Scotch-Brite and kind of clean it up a little bit. So on this one, let's see if we can take a look here. Let's see, there we go. I don't know how well you can see it, but right down through here, let's see, there we go. Right down through here, you can see the oil seal sticking out a little bit, so we've got to be mindful of that. I'm going to see if we can't take and maybe pull that out and put a new one in there and kind of clean this up so it's flush. Okay, that's not supposed to happen. So just by pushing on it, interesting. I don't know if you can see that. I'm actually moving this whole oil seal by hand. We're not supposed to be doing that. So a lot of silicone right down through here I'm seeing. It's clear silicone too. Somebody wasn't paying attention to directions. You do not use clear silicone or silicone period in order to install this seal. So, scratch that. We're not installing the trigger wheel unit just yet. We got to address the crankshaft oil seal first. Well, hopefully this wasn't too hard to watch. So just to recap, the reason I made this video is with safety in mind. I want to get this in front of Lycoming. If it needs to go in front of the FAA, then the proper channels will be followed. But safety in mind, oil seals are big with keeping these engines alive. You lose the oil, you'll lose the engine life. You lose the engine life, you lose the engine, you potentially lose the life of everybody sitting inside this aircraft, not counting innocent bystanders on the ground. Safety first. As I showed you in the service letter from Lycoming on TBO, 12 years. This aircraft, 30 years since overhaul. That aircraft that we also demonstrated, 20 years since overhaul. Both of these have exceeded the TBO. So even though the hour limit falls under Part 91, not being required for overhaul, it does require people like myself that carry an inspection authorization to be able to return these aircraft to service as airworthy. But the oil seal is not an easily accessible item. You have to pull the propeller, you have to pull the flywheel. The only time you would potentially notice a failure is if you have oil seepage out of the front, or at a 5-year inspection if you have to pull it to clean the crankshaft on those that are sealed, that have to pull the plug unless it's been permanently complied with, or to pull the prop to clean out the sludge. So not a regular inspection item. If the sealant is not holding up and is coming loose, causing oil seals to come loose, there's a risk. We need to mitigate the risk and make things safer. So with that being said, if you like these videos, give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, share the videos, get this information out there so people can start to understand what's going on with these aircraft. These are aging aircraft. They need to be handled carefully. My life, your life, anybody that's in this aircraft, anybody on the ground underneath the aircraft, we're all in jeopardy. So, hope this helps. So it's Adam from Tech Tips. We'll see you here next time.